So my name is Ran, and I was a medical officer in the forces. For me, the beginning of my military career, it was very motivating, went very smoothly. I was very enthusiastic about everything I did. And eventually, when the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic hit, that's when I started to feel a little bit out of place. At that moment, I was on maternity leave. I had a 6-month-old baby that I was breastfeeding exclusively. I had a little bit of difficulty being alone with my baby. At first, I felt like I needed to do things. And so when the pandemic hit and you couldn't go out, couldn't do anything, couldn't see anyone, it was really hard for me to stay alone at home with my baby. And I also felt guilty because I was a doctor, a military doctor. So of course I felt like I needed to do something to help with the pandemic. I felt like really stuck. And so that went on for a few months until I realized, okay, this is not working and I'm not well. They still hadn't called me back to work yet, so I decided to prepare myself to go back to work by consulting a psychologist. And so back in the pandemic days, we started off with virtual consultations, so it was by Zoom. And because my schedule was a little all over the place with the baby, we did Zoom sessions here and there. It wasn't very regular. And eventually, when my chain of command called and said, pack your bags, here's your kit list, we can call you and you're at 4 hours notice to move, I kind of panicked. I packed my bags, thought I was crying the whole time. And from then on, I cried 8 times a day trying to figure out how to feed my baby while I was away from him. And he cried. I felt even more guilty all the time for not being present at work as much as I wanted to be, like mentally. But I was working overtime. I was working so many hours that I wasn't very present at home either. Eventually, I realized that that was not the way to go. I was trying to do and do and do more and more and more to make up for my guilt. And then I eventually burnt out. And at that moment, I got a little bit of time off away from work, which I came back to eventually very, very gradually, because it took a lot of time for me to actually accept that I was receiving support and to feel grateful for the support instead of just feeling guilty all the time. And I eventually started seeing my psychologist in person when it was allowed post-pandemic, and that really helped going regularly to regular sessions and just to be given the time to go instead of trying to hide and make my own time. That's a luxury that not everyone has, but that in the military, you know, it's one of the barriers to care that has been taken down, is that people can actually be given time to go to those services. And so I ended up taking advantage of that, and it helped. At some point, I realized that I wasn't as mindful and as present and as peaceful as I wanted to be as a wife, as a mother. I really didn't want this to wash off on my kids. I know that they could feel the tension, even if, you know, we were not overtly, you know, fighting in front of them. I wasn't kind to myself. I would say things to myself that were unkind, and I didn't want my kids to have that example. That's when it hit that, okay, I really need to concentrate on my care, not just go to one Zoom session here and there to be ready for the next day of work. I had to really slow down and concentrate on getting really better so that I could be a better person to live with, because I didn't like myself. There's this concept of resilience in the Canadian Armed Forces that we use a lot, and we tend to talk about being mentally strong, being physically strong, continuing despite adversity, and being able to put the mission first. But there's also this other concept of resilience where you can stumble and you can even fall, and it's how you get back up that counts. And it's how you utilize your resources and the resources that are offered to you. And by the way, there are a lot of resources in the Canadian Armed Forces. We're lucky for that. So being able to say, I need help, and I'm going to use the help that is offered to me in order to get better and stronger, in order to be able to give what I have to give, that's also a form of resilience.